You're listening to Sharkbone, a Las Vegas role-playing game podcast. Sharkbone. Welcome to Sharkbone. This is episode 7, being recorded Monday, April 26th, 2010. My name is Devin.
I'm Jarvis.
Welcome to the show again.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Today we'll jump into our GM Garden topic.
Soon to be renamed GM Garden.
Yes. I was thinking our name is Sharkbone, and then we have a garden and a grease monkey, and that just kind of doesn't go.
And apparently we can't have underwater gardens.
Nah.
Nope. No, it's cool. So stay tuned, because I don't know what they're going to be called, and Devin doesn't know what they're going to be called, and they'll be called something.
They will be called something.
I'm sure it'll be awesome.
No, I'm sure it will, because everything we do is awesome.
That's right.
Yep. The GM Garden topic for today is The Rundown, from 2003, directed by Peter Berg, starring Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, Seann William Scott, and Christopher Walken.
And Eva Mendes, I believe, is the girl.
I don't know.
I think it was her.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't look at that part.
I get her confused with somebody else, so it might have been the other girl, but I think it was her. Anyway.
Yeah. So, did you take a look at this movie, Jarvis?
I did. I watched it this afternoon, actually.
As did I.
And that was only the second time I had seen it, and I didn't remember much from the first time.
No?
Nope.
What'd you think?
It was pretty good. It was, for what you wanted to talk about, because the grease monkey topic is going to be about stunting, it was a very appropriate movie for that, because there's a lot of over-the-top action, and just kind of, like, it was really funny.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, for, like, an action movie. I mean, it's kind of a buddy movie, but it was surprisingly funny. And it reminded me just how good The Rock is in, like, comedic roles.
Yeah, he's actually a really good actor.
I feel like we're a movie review podcast.
Yeah, we are.
Right now.
Kind of. All right, let's move into RPG stuff.
Fantastic.
For story items for an RPG, there was one thing that I thought was really, really cool that I want to do in an RPG.
What's that, boss?
At the very beginning, The Rock's character, he started out indebted to someone. So it already started out that he owed this somebody favors, and that somebody was controlling his actions to a certain degree. And I thought that was really cool.
Reminds me of a certain Star Wars game that I ran just before I moved to Vegas. It was
you told me about that.
It was the last game I ran in Indianapolis, where I was from. And the characters, I told them they could be light side, dark side, whatever, didn't matter, because I wasn't going to put any kind of constraints on. We were only going to play the game for like 4 or 5 sessions before I left.
Right.
So I said, play whatever the hell you want. And I'll find a reason for you to get along. And the reason was that they were all in debt to Gardula the Hutt, which was Jabba the Hutt's sister.
Okay.
And so they all owed her, and she's a big crime boss, just like Jabba is, and she's from the expanded universe and all that other business. So their very first mission was they were going to have to go rescue some slaves, steal some slaves back that were owed to Gardula the Hutt. And it was actually really interesting, because I had them send, they were delivering this recorded message from her to like a client that she did some business with.
Uh-huh.
And when they got there, they handed over the recorded message. No, I'm sorry. They decided to hack it first before they got there. They were like, let's see what this message says, and why are we even carrying this? And this seems shady. And once they got the message to play, they decrypted it. And it said, I owe you 12 slaves, and here's 6 of them, which were the player characters. Do what you want with them. And they were like, oh, that evil woman. So they immediately turned on her, and that's what our campaign was about.
That's a lot of fun.
Sessions. But it was a great way for indebting all the characters like that. It was a very great way to bring in a hodgepodge of player characters.
Yeah.
People that would never ever get along otherwise.
I didn't think about that aspect of it. That would really work.
To say you all owe the same person.
Yeah.
And then it was a neat way to instantly glue the party and give them that initial hook.
That's really good. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about that when I was...
So what were you thinking about?
Well, I was actually thinking like in a personal backstory. Because then one person is in with the group. He has his own reasons for being there. And then he like maybe gets a midnight phone call from this someone that says, hey, do this for me and it may or may not be kind of working against what the party's working for. Is like, do this for me, and I'll wipe it clean. I'll wipe your slate clean. And so maybe that person's like conflicted.
Okay.
It's like, I don't want to do that, but he's gonna wipe my slate clean, and it's really not gonna hurt these guys that bad. Maybe I can pull it off without getting killed, without my own buddies killing me.
Yeah. So there's such a strong hook in having a player character that's in debt or owes, like especially some big crime villain or something like that. I mean, that's the obvious choice. So what are some ways that a player character could, like, what are some things you could be in debt for?
Well, the obvious one is money.
Gambling issues.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or they just borrowed to do something. Maybe they borrowed to buy their mother out of slavery, and then something went bad and they couldn't pay it back, so they're on the run.
I like that. Or maybe they didn't even borrow any money, but they got their mother out of slavery, and, you know, to use Star Wars as an example, maybe somebody's a slave somewhere, or Chewbacca is, or something like that, and Han comes along and says, hey, get my buddy out. I don't have the resources. I can't take that entire moon.
Yeah, they could owe a favor.
And maybe Jabba says, I'll get your buddy out of slavery, but you're going to owe me one.
Yeah.
You know, or you're just going to owe me an undefined number until I decide that you don't owe me anymore.
Right. Which is what I think crime bosses should do in games.
Absolutely. That's completely what they should do. So owing money is an obvious example, and then owing a favor for a favor that has been done for you is a good one. Like, we got somebody out of slavery for you. Maybe somebody put a hit out on, like, your family. You know, it was like the villain from The Last Adventure or something, and they sent some assassins after your family, so then like an assassin's guild or a criminal organization or something actually stopped that assassination. Yeah. Saving your family, and then says, you owe me.
I was also thinking that maybe in the backstory they committed some indiscretion, something that would get them into a lot of trouble if it came to light. The player character? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so somebody's got dirt on them. It says, you do this, or I'm going to send this out.
Blackmail.
Yeah.
Exactly. I like that. I like that. It would be very good for... The first thing that comes to my mind is, like, magic-using characters. Uh-huh. Especially if they're like a cleric or something, and they could have some bit of, like, dark magic use in their past.
Yeah.
And then somebody comes along and says, maybe somebody from the infernal organization or the evil cult, and says, hey, you know, I know where you got that tattoo, and I'm gonna tell everybody that you have our mark. If you don't, and maybe you actually were in the evil cult, maybe you were never in the evil cult, but you just have a funny looking birthmark.
Maybe you were just one of their slaves, and that's a mark of property.
Exactly. Maybe you were one of their slaves, and they branded you. Who knows? Yeah. But that's not going to change the eyes of, like, your friends and the villagers when they find out that you have this mark of this dark cult.
Yeah. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So what did you find in the movie?
Oh, geez. I really liked... I liked Christopher Walken's villain character.
Yeah,
being the completely just business, money motivated.
Yeah.
So it was very easy to imagine what he was going to do in any given situation.
I did think he was very transparent.
Yeah.
To the people who were against him.
Absolutely.
He's like, this is what motivates me, and step out of my way.
I'm here for money.
Yeah.
So it was neat that this rich baron character, between owning the mine and building the village that was near the mine,
right,
and then employing all the villagers that worked at the mine because they were just farmers and indigenous like jungle people.
Yeah.
Before he got there, and then he gave them clothes and paid them like 75 cents an hour. I think they said it was something ridiculous.
62, I think. 64, something like that. Yeah. It was absolutely
so he paid
insane.
them nothing. But they actually got like a village and running water and all this stuff for working for him. But then they didn't have enough to pay their rent and stuff because he would raise the rent.
Right.
They didn't have enough, so then all of a sudden now they owe him back rent. So now they stay working there forever.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to work off the debt. So it was very interesting that just this rich villain character, this baron, all of a sudden like owned an entire plot of jungle, so you're in his territory because he
Right.
owns the whole area. But he basically owns like the entire village, because he built it, because
Right.
it was built for his, to house his workers.
Uh-huh.
And he also owns all the workers. So they're kind of in his debt.
Yeah.
So you get to an area and it's kind of like Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine or something, but much more overt.
Yeah.
Because on Tatooine you have like the little farmers where Luke grew up, and they don't work for Jabba.
No.
They just
really
live
don't.
on the same moon that he happens to kind of rule.
Yeah.
So I thought it was very interesting that there's this villain character that owns everything.
It was very thinly veiled slavery.
Extremely. And he had like this evil empire.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was that the evil empire is all like legitimate on the books.
Uh-huh.
So like no kind of government or law organization could come in because he wasn't really doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, not according to the law.
Not according to the law.
Yeah.
Not in the letter of the law.
Exactly. So that would be interesting to put into a game, to have some kind of villain who is completely under the radar of like your government or law organizations because he's not breaking any rules. But yet he's so evil and such a bastard that everybody's still in his debt and he still owns everyone.
And everyone still knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, and he's a completely obvious bad guy. And it's also interesting too that I'm sure local police and stuff, I'm sure he just paid them off.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it meant like because he had all this money, if there was some worker that actually showed any kind of spirit, then he would probably just take that worker out of the mines and hand that worker a gun and say, I'm going to pay you an exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah.
We're going to call it like $300 a week. And I'm going to pay you all this money, but now you're on my private security force.
Right.
So now you have nothing to complain about. So just by throwing money at the situation, you could take away the spirit of like rebellion.
Yeah.
And that would be kind of cool.
One thing I also liked about the villain, Christopher Walken's character, was that he was always at the front. Whenever there was something going down, he was right there.
Yeah, he just ran out there by himself.
Yeah. He wasn't sending his cronies
Yeah.
in there. They were all there backing him up and doing the real work.
Yep, he would take the gun
But
in
he
his
was
hand
there. Yeah.
and go try to deal with the situation. Absolutely. And he would have his little bodyguards, his right-hand men,
Yeah.
right on either side of him. But he was there dealing with it. And yeah, that's true. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it would be really cool because most villains in games that I've experienced, I think most of them are the behind the scenes, plotting, moving pawns
Well, because
around.
the minute you put anything in front of the player characters, it usually gets a broadsword in the face.
Yeah, but that was also interesting because the characters, they were too busy with the henchmen.
That's what I was going to say. It was neat that every time Christopher Walken showed up, and he did show up all the time,
Yeah,
every
he did.
time there was a situation to be dealt with. But he always had this, he had 50 goons with him.
Yeah,
So you can't do anything to him. You can't say anything to his face.
exactly.
Because if you do get the lucky shot off, you're not making it out of there.
No.
And that was kind of cool. So by showing up with that entourage, it allowed him to be in all those scenes, facing off with the hero over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Being, a complete overt evil guy, but the hero couldn't do anything about it because there were 50 dudes in the background.
Exactly.
So that's very cool.
Yep.
And I don't think enough RPGs use henchmen and troops effectively.
I can't say that I've seen a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even talking about minion rules or mass combat or anything like that, but I'm just saying you design a villain in a game, and usually, actually, I think it's a related issue. Probably because RPGs can't handle large battles very well.
Mm-hmm.
And some do it better than others, and everybody has personal preferences and everything else. But it's definitely a slow point in the game.
Yes.
To have a crazy large battle.
Yeah, it is.
So because RPGs have such difficulty with that, myself included, I think us as GMs tend to design stories where we come to the one-on-one battle with the evil guy.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, instead of having the evil guy and his 50 goons or his elite guard.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to do that more often. And maybe that will extend the life of our evil guy.
Which would be cool.
Because there's nothing better than a recurring villain.
Yeah,
and if
recurring villains are a lot of fun.
Yeah, if there's like 19 Imperial guards there, they don't have to stop the heroes. All they have to do is hold them up for 2 rounds so that the villain can get away, and then we can see him next time.
Yeah,
with Squad 3 of his Imperial Guard. You know,
I like that.
We could totally do that.
Another thing that I thought was really cool was that the adventuring party in the movie was a party of necessity. Like, none of those people really got along together, and they all had their motivations, but they were together because situations forced them to be together.
Okay.
Like, Sean William Scott's character, what is his name? Travis.
Yes.
He was with Beck because Beck was there to fetch him. Because Beck was forcibly taking him out of there. That was the only reason they were together.
Yes.
And I thought that was cool that they really, really didn't like each other. One was there to take the other one back to quote-unquote justice, and the other one was perfectly happy staying where he was. But situations forced them to work together.
As they're both running from the evil, jungle baron. Absolutely. So, you like that because in a game you can have 2 people, maybe once in a while a good story is to have a, good aligned character and a not so good aligned character.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't need to stick together for the entire campaign. But maybe for this one adventure or these 2 adventures, maybe it would be really fun to mix that party up a little for a greater good,
Yeah.
Or for a bigger cause. That would actually be really cool.
Yeah, I think it would also give some more opportunities for some inter-character conflict.
Oh, it definitely would.
Yeah, because they might come to a point where one party thinks that they've got the upper hand, so they'll like backstab the other party and then take off. And then maybe they did have the upper hand, maybe they didn't.
Yep.
And maybe they run off and realize that, I can't do it without that guy, even though I can't stand him.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll have to go back and be like, hey, sorry, can I get your help?
That makes me think that that's some really good advice for if you do have a party with a lot of inter-character conflict. They don't really get along. There's a lot of friction. It happens in World of Darkness games a lot, vampire games, because they're kind of structured for that, or at least that's the way that most of us run them.
Right.
But especially if you start mixing like different supernaturals together and stuff like that, it can happen quite a bit where, the agenda of a werewolf is not going to be the same as the agenda for a vampire.
Of course.
So we've come together for this cause, but we have all this friction, and you know what? Screw it. My Wolverine character says, screw the X-Men. I'm out.
Yeah.
And he just takes off. Well, that's where a lot of games break down, but you just made me think that maybe that's when the GM should just step in and tell a couple stories about how hard it is for Wolverine to fulfill his goals on his own.
Yeah.
And you can just hammer that point home and say, okay, Wolverine, strike out alone, and I will send so many Sentinels and evil mutants and whatever else after you that you won't know what hit you until you go crawling back to the X-Men for backup.
It's like that big bad evil guy that has 19 elite guards. If you go there alone, he still has 19 elite guards.
Absolutely. He's not going to be leveled to you all of a sudden. One thing that would actually be really interesting is you don't necessarily have to railroad him back. You don't have to, as Wolverine says, no, I can take this guy alone. Or, I'm trying to kill the guy that killed my parents. Right. So, and you guys, the only thing you want is this money, and that has nothing to do with, killing the guy that killed my parents. So screw you. I'm going to go get my revenge.
Okay.
So as he runs off to get his revenge, you don't have to send like hundreds of guys after him.
Oh, no.
What's that?
No.
Oh, got it. You said, oh no, I thought something bad was happening with the,
I was agreeing with you in the negative.
Okay. That makes sense. So instead of sending 100 guys after the Wolverine character, instead you could just start designing some encounters that are actually, kind of geared to the strengths of the other party members.
Yeah.
So that when Wolverine gets into a situation and says, oh man,
it would be really good to have Cyclops here.
Yeah, wow, that thing's flying around and I can't hit it from the ground. Too bad I can't just shoot it with laser beams. Man, I guess that guy was handy in some situations.
Right.
Yeah, and then you could kind of do that, and then the player would go, okay, maybe those guys maybe it was nice to have those skills around.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go back. And if it's like a computer hacker character they're leaving in the dust, then all of a sudden the next villain they chase after is a computer criminal. And what are they going to do?
Yeah. Sounds like fun to me.
Yeah, and that would be a great way to kind of encourage the party cohesion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I do. That would be a lot of fun.
Cool beans.
Well, I think we're ready to slide into our grease monkey topic. Do you?
All right. What? Do we have time for one more point?
Yes. Go ahead.
The rundown. Okay. I love the thing that stuck out most in my head about the movie was that the hero didn't like guns.
Yeah.
Hated guns. Was never going to use them. He just beat everyone's ass and said, "I won't touch guns."
Yep.
And halfway through the movie, the funny sidekick is saying, "What's wrong with guns, man?" He says, "I just don't like them." "Why don't you like them?"
Yeah.
"Well, there's just bad things happen." "What kind of bad things?" And they go back and forth and back and forth. And you just get the impression that this guy can use guns.
Yeah.
He just doesn't like the result of what happens when he uses guns.
Yeah, definitely.
So as they continue to build that up, all of a sudden we get to the climax, the big fight scene, and he decides to start using guns again.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Glorious. So to me, that instantly reminds me of a Primetime Adventures game I played, where one of the players designed a character that was like this retired military general.
Okay.
And he was this world-renowned martial artist and had developed his own martial art that was this like devastating city block leveling martial art.
Okay.
Called like the Broken Pagoda style, I believe.
All right.
So he developed this incredible martial art, but he swore that he swore off the life of violence and decided that he was retired.
Okay.
And it's very, if you've ever seen The Last Airbender, the Avatar cartoon.
Okay.
Zuko's Uncle Iroh is very similar because he's this military genius, this brilliant general that now just wants to like drink tea and find peace.
All right.
Or kind of like Yoda.
Makes sense.
You know, because I'm looking for a great warrior. Oh, war's not make one great, and you go through the whole thing. So Yoda's like giving up that life, even though he's a secret badass. So I love the concept of having, like going into the story saying, my character can do this, but he's going to try not to.
Okay.
Because it creates a very interesting, arc, and you know that the climax is going to involve, does he go back that road, or does he avoid it?
Of course.
You know, still.
That's a huge point in the character.
Absolutely. So if he swears off guns because too many innocent people die or whatever, then what kind of situation? And the sidekick character in the movie The Rundown actually brought it up. He said, if your best friend was in trouble, you know, if somebody was pointing a gun to your best friend's head, would you pick up a gun then? And he says, no. And he's like, what? You wouldn't save your best friend? He's like, Santa Claus would pick up a gun to save his best friend. And they go through that whole bit. So now if somebody designs a character, if one of the players designs a character with this, like, I won't use this gun, or I'll never use offensive magic, or I will never, you know, I'm a cleric, but all I'll do is heal people.
Okay.
I won't use my, like Pelor's, divine wrath or something like that. I'll just heal people. I'm just a medic. Then you as the GM have this very interesting thing where you can just keep throwing situation after situation and see if he sticks to those convictions.
That would be very interesting.
It would be. And then everybody, like maybe even the person who's playing that character as well, is now glued to the story, and they're like, oh man, is this going to be the moment? Like now you've got his like wife and child dangling over the lava pit or whatever. Uh-huh. You know, is this going to be the moment where he finally snaps, or is he going to let them die? Who knows? Oh. And whichever way the character goes is this fascinating story. You know, where he just embraces the wrath and slaughters everyone, or he lets his wife and child die to hold to his peaceful convictions. That's hardcore. Yeah, it is.
You know, I would, thinking about that, I would love to see a sorcerer built that has sworn off the use of offensive magic.
Uh-huh.
But then I would also like to see when they build that character, not just give him all defensive spells, but give him some offensive spells too.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's used them in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, I can cast that spell, but I won't.
Uh-huh.
And then maybe if he decides to fall back into that, he's got that strong spell to fall back on.
Oh, absolutely. Like when when we were playing Primetime Adventures and the player made the retired general character with his Shattered Pagoda style.
Okay.
You actually do have you don't have skills, but you have traits in that game.
All right.
And you can only pick like 3 traits. And these traits give you a bonus. So you might have a trait that says I'm a cop, or you might have a trait that says I'm a sharpshooter.
Okay.
So being a master of the Shattered Pagoda style was one of his traits. So it gave him a bonus, and he was just as skilled at it as anybody could be.
Okay.
But he never ever used it.
So he had a third of his
Exactly.
mechanics that he couldn't use.
Exactly. That he
Wow.
never ever used because of the story potential that came out of that. And it was really, really neat.
That is neat.
That
sounds fun.
You could make like a big half-orc character or something who is really, really strong. Give him a 20 in strength, and then he gets his like little racial bonus or whatever, so his strength is a 22. Or something. I don't know how it works anymore. But that's close enough. So yeah, now his strength is now a 22, but he picks up a sling or he picks up archery because the last time he hit somebody with a sword, he ended up cleaving them in half and it was an innocent or something. And he says, I won't use my strength anymore.
All right.
So he just goes around the game, like slinging sling bullets at people or firing arrows or something with not at all his best ability.
That would be wild.
He's just trying to make do, and trying to avoid using his best trick.
Yeah. You'd have to think of a reason why, and that reason why would be awesome, I'm sure.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah, it would.
It'd be very, very cool.
Yes, it would.
Awesome. Okay, I'm
All
happy
right.
now.
Now let's slide into Grease Monkey.
Oh, slide into Grease Monkey.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about stunting. We talked about it a little bit last week.
We did. It kind of came up when we were talking about player narration.
And I just thought that we could touch on it again, go into a little more detail, and I thought it was great with the movie.
With the rundown, it does. They did a lot of stunts in that movie.
Now, White Wolf already, they started stunting in, what was it, Scion?
No, it actually came in Exalted first.
Okay.
And they specifically call it stunting. But
Right.
there has been similar ideas in some other games. I know Seventh Sea, Seven Seas. It's a swashbuckling game.
Okay. Does it use Fate or Fudge?
No, it's
No?
actually
Okay.
before that. It uses a roll and keep system, which is the same thing Legend of the Five Rings uses.
Okay. I haven't played either of those
And
games.
yeah, Seventh Sea is piratey swashbucklers.
All right.
Written by John Wick, and it uses a drama dice system.
Okay.
Where it's not exactly stunting like you know it, or like we know it from Exalted, but it's basically where if you do good role play, then the GM can award you with drama dice.
Okay.
And then you can cash those dice in because you roll a dice pool to hit somebody with your sword. So if during the party, you did such a good job role playing your, seduction of that, housemaid or
Okay.
whatever, and everybody laughed and everybody had a great time and it was just an awesome scene, then the GM can give you like 3 drama dice. And then when it comes time to face off with the villain later, you have 3 bonus dice that you can use against them.
Okay.
Which is actually a pretty big deal because you're only rolling like 6 dice.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah, so to have 3 extra dice is a pretty big chunk of change.
Yeah.
And the GM is encouraged by the storyteller section of the book to be very, very liberal in giving out those dice and give them for all kinds of reasons. Just anytime somebody goes above and beyond their description, give them some drama dice.
Sure. That kind of actually sounds like the cool points we use.
It's very, very similar to the way we do cool points.
When I'm talking about stunting, I'm more thinking like when you are going to attack somebody, you just describe it in a very cool way, or you use something of the environment in a really cool way,
Yes.
something to just add to the color of it. I think that's the definition I'm going to work on
Absolutely.
for stunting right now, and I think that's the way they do it in Exalted.
It's the way they do it in both Exalted and Scion. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right, and so it's really easy to port over to all the other White Wolf games
Extremely easy.
because it uses the same system.
The premise of it is to spell it out very simply, in case you didn't catch it last time or we didn't cover it well enough, is if I hit somebody with my sword, I say I'm going to attack him with my long sword.
Right.
Awesome. Roll your sword skill. If I'm going to smile and laugh maniacally and attack him with my long sword, then we go, oh wow, that's a little bit interesting. You've added a little bit of color to that scene. So roll your long sword and add a bonus die.
Yeah.
If you say, I'm going to laugh maniacally and attack him with my long sword as the shiny reflective blade catches the glint of the sun, which is, my divine parentage, because I'm a solar exalted.
Right.
Then all of a sudden you've earned yourself 2 bonus dice. And if your description actually gets so awesome that everybody at the table claps or gives you a huzzah or whatever, or just sits there with their jaw dropped going, oh man, that's cool, then you actually earn 3 bonus dice. So the very simple concept is that the more colorfully you describe an action, and it's any action, it's hitting that guy with your sword, or it's doing occult research in that book.
Yeah.
Any action at all, which is my favorite thing about it.
Yeah, I like it for that reason too.
Absolutely. But the more colorful you make that action, the more likely you are to succeed in it, which is very, very, very cool.
Yeah.
So the guy who doesn't bring anything to the table, the guy who shows up to the game hungry and tired and doesn't really want to play, is actually at a disadvantage.
Yes. Yeah.
Because his character is being hindered. Now, you're not taking anything away from that character at all.
You're just not taking advantage of that
Exactly.
resource that's there.
Exactly. That guy gets no penalty, so he can show up to the game sleepy and he can say, I hit him with my sword, and he's just as effective as he usually is. But then when the player sitting next to him says, I use my monkey style to slip my blade directly under my opponent's guard, etc., 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 all of a sudden he earns bonus dice.
Yeah.
And he's more likely to succeed. So the more coolness you add to your description, the more likely it is to work. And that's very, very neat.
Yeah, I like it. It makes the scenes more dramatic and makes it run more like a movie. Something that I can sit down and actually enjoy, other than I hit him with my sword. Roll die. 18.
Absolutely.
Because that tends to get boring.
And that tends to happen in a lot of D&D games.
Yes, it does.
Which is part of what makes it feel like a board game for me.
It can happen in pretty much any game, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, one of the other things that's neat about Stunting is that they've actually worked it into the Exalted system, where if you give a short description that qualifies for a 1 die stunt, then when you succeed in that roll, when you do strike that guy with your sword, or when you do find the answer you were looking for in that occult text, you actually get a mote of energy, which is like a mana point in that game. So you say, I'm going to do a 1 die stunt, as you give your description, and the GM says that's a 1 die stunt. So you get your bonus die, but then not only do you get that die and have an increased chance of success, but there's a little reward for succeeding. Because now you've struck him and regained a mana point.
All right.
If you earn 2 dice, then not only have you hit your opponent, but you gain a mana point or like a willpower point, which is kind of like an action point or something like that.
Sure.
And if you actually give a cool enough description to qualify for a 3 die stunt, and that action succeeds, then you actually can get a bonus experience point from that.
All
so
right.
you can cash in for like 3 mana, or you can say, just give me an extra experience point at the end of the game, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. That's really cool.
So there's actual like game mechanical benefits, not just from succeeding in your action, but there's actually game system rewards for stunting, which is really neat.
That is really neat. That wouldn't be too hard to put in place in pretty much any other game either.
Not at all. So in a dice pool system, it's really easy to say, if you give a character any extra description to his action, instead of just saying, I use skill X for task Y.
Right.
If you say, I use skill X in this way, and this is how I'm doing it, and I adjust the glasses as I read the book, and all this other stuff. So not only do you get bonus dice, like in a dice pool system, it's really easy to say, we'll add 2 extra dice.
Yeah.
I think the equivalent in like a D20 system, a D&D and all the other stuff would just say, okay, you've earned yourself an automatic +2 to the task.
Okay. You could do it that way.
You know, because that keeps the same spirit.
Yeah.
And if you want to say a +2 or if you want to say a +5, it all depends on your game and what the difficulties are assorted like.
Right. I did do this in a D&D game I'm running right now. And what I did is because we're running Eberron, and Eberron already has action points.
Yes.
Which is a D6 on top of the D20 you roll.
Yes.
So what I said is if they stunt, if they describe an action in a very, very cool way, it's an immediate action point they can use on that D20 roll only.
Definitely.
And it's been pretty cool.
Definitely. So what kind of effect has that had on your game?
It's made them fail a lot less.
That's actually really good.
I think so. Because they're heroes, and I want them to succeed.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
There still have been times where they go up against a very, very large opponent. Like, one of them, they went up against a dire ape, and that dire ape almost one-shotted somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really cool. But then they were able to take it down. Because they were down to 3 party members of the 4, and the guy that dropped was their strongest melee fighter, but they were still able to take it down because they were using stunting.
That's very cool.
It was.
So here's a question. Do you think that the bonus, which was a D6, right? They added to their roll. So do you think that extra D6 has made the game too easy?
No.
No?
No, not at all.
Okay. And are you leveling the encounters with that extra D6 in mind, or are you still doing it based on their normal natural abilities?
I'm still doing it based on their normal natural abilities.
Okay.
Because the way it works is the D20, you get a result from 1 to 20 anyway.
Yeah.
So they're not always guaranteed to get a 26.
Oh, not at all.
Sometimes they might roll a 7.
Not at all.
And then they roll that D6 and they might get a 2.
Yeah.
So their number is 9, which in most cases is probably still a failure.
Oh, God, because if you think about it, the average result on the 20-sided die is an 11.
Yeah.
Or actually a 10.5. The average result on that D6 is a 3.5.
Uh-huh.
So their average roll is a 14.
Yeah, 14 or 15.
That's better than, your average roll being a 10, but not that much better.
No, it's not.
That's not enough to really swing the game one direction or another.
No, it's really not. But it does give it a little more heroic feel because
that's cool.
When they succeed greatly, they succeed greatly.
With a 26.
Yeah, with a 26, they can demolish pretty much just about everything.
And I'd be willing to bet that any grittiness you lost by adding that bonus D6 if you add description and a cool stunt to your action.
Right.
I'd be willing to bet that any mechanical grittiness that you lost from that, you'd immediately get back in color and interesting fight scenes and cool storylines.
Yeah.
Because instead of just a very dull sounding, I swing my sword, I use my great cleave.
Yeah.
I fight defensively. Great. What does fighting defensively actually look like?
Yeah.
What are you doing to stay on the defensive but still throw in a jab once in a while? What are you doing to redouble your guard that you don't normally do when you fight?
Yeah.
Are you just putting your shield out in front and have your sword arm behind where normally you don't? Like, what's it look like?
Yeah. Which is, because it's all about imagination and imagining what's actually happening. Because if you're just staring at your miniatures on the mat and the dice, you're playing a board game.
Yep.
So if you're imagining it, then it becomes a role-playing game, and then it's more fun.
Definitely. So, stunting reminds me of, it brings to mind that Raising the Stakes PDF that I think we've talked about before.
We have. It's been a while.
There you go. So, we'll link to it again, because it's an awesome little rules tweak for D20. And they have a really neat system in that where a player can call for a raise on a roll. So if he says, if the GM says, okay, the orc just hit you with his battle axe, you took 6 points of damage, it's your turn, what do you do? Then you can say, okay, I shoot him with my crossbow. And the GM will say, well, his AC is an 18. And go ahead and take your shot. Or you can raise the stakes and say, I'm going to shoot him with my crossbow, but I don't just want to injure him. I actually want to pin his sword arm to his side so that he can't fight me anymore.
Okay.
Then the GM says, okay, that's really cool, but you're going to need his AC is an 18 and you're going to need like a 26 to pull that off.
Okay.
So it's really neat because it allows the players to get away with some stuff that they couldn't normally get away with.
Right.
And they can add some interesting color that the system doesn't really allow for. But it's also really cool because if you have a super bullseye elven archer, and then you just have like this human fighter, the elven archer is going to be awesome with his bow, and the human fighter his bow is a fallback weapon.
Yeah.
That's if he loses his sword, he'll pull out his crossbow for one shot.
Yeah.
So if we're fighting something that's on the other side of the river, that human is trying to hit the lowest AC he can so he can get a lucky shot with his crossbow and do any kind of damage.
Yeah.
Whereas the elven archer goes, look, man, I already have like a plus 18 to my roll. Like, all I have to do is get a 3 on this frickin' die. I'm gonna hit the guy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit the guy and do my base amount of damage. But if we raise the stakes, maybe I can do some cool feat. Maybe I can get some bonus out of it. Maybe I can hit the guy in the throat so that he can't yell orders to his troops anymore.
I like that.
And so it allows the guy who has built his character for one thing, has built his character to be a bullseye archer. It now allows him some extra options.
Yeah.
That
It allows
he can bring
him to
in.
do some special things with his skill.
Which is very, very cool.
It is.
Another thing, I don't remember if it's exactly in that same system or if it's like an optional rule or variation, but I know it's also in the Raising the Stakes PDF, is the ability to say, okay, I'm going to shoot the guy with this arrow, and when I shoot him with the arrow, I actually want that girl that's standing over there watching this fight to be really impressed with my shot.
Okay.
And I want her to come home with me afterwards.
Give you a social bonus?
Yeah. So the GM can say, okay, well, if you succeed on that roll, we'll say that the girl starts flirting with you. But if you fail, that girl actually starts laughing, and your reputation in the town goes down, because you can't hit the broadside of the barn. So there's also a stake setting thing that you can do. And the reason I'm talking about this with stunting is because it's all just ways to add color and say, I think this extra thing should happen.
Definitely.
And one way you can do that is go, okay, well, if you want that extra thing to happen, it's going to be a little bit harder on the roll. Or you can say, if you want that extra thing to happen, then there's going to be this other extra thing that happens if you fail.
Yeah.
And however you want to do it in your game, you can do it. Whereas in Exalted and stuff, it's a game of over-the-top anime-style action.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be able to, pick one dude up off the battlefield and fling him at 17 of his buddies and knock them all to the ground. That's what the action in Exalted is supposed to be like.
All right.
So in that game, it just says, oh, you've added color. It's more likely to happen now.
Nice.
You could kick that guy, but if you do 3 backflips before you kick that guy, it's going to be easier. There's no extra penalty for failure. You're just going to be more likely to succeed, which is very neat.
Yeah. I like that.
And it depends on the flavor you want to put in your game.
One thing I do want to note about stunting is a lot of times a player will describe an action, say they're on a balcony, and there's a bad guy downstairs that is threatening people. And so he wants to attack him by swinging on a rope down and slicing at him while he's passing by. Don't make him roll to swing on the rope.
No,
that's just lame.
Yes.
You give them the bonus for stunting. Don't make them make a dex check or a strength check or something to hang on to the rope.
Yes.
Because that defeats the purpose.
Yes, and in Exalted, the rules specifically state that you can do a whole manner of things during your stunt. Even things that would normally require a dice roll on their own.
Right.
Okay, I want to, the villain I'm fighting just backed up 6 stairs.
Uh-huh.
So now he has higher ground. So I want to run up there and stab him. But instead of running up the steps after him, I'm just going to climb up the stair rail I'm going to climb up the rail and actually get behind him and then stab him there.
Okay.
Don't make him roll to climb, even though climbing would normally necessitate a roll.
Yeah.
Don't have him roll to climb because what he's ultimately doing is still just stabbing the guy. He's just doing it in a more colorful way.
Exactly.
You know, so the task he's rolling for is still just whether or not he hits him with his sword. But whether he's jumping from one horse to another, and then backflipping and shrugging out of his armor all at the same time, the question is not whether he can perform all these feats individually. The question is, does his sword land in the other guy's belly or not?
Yeah.
And if that's what you're focusing on, then that's the only thing you should be rolling for.
Exactly.
And everything else should just add color and a bonus.
Yeah. So when should stunting be used?
When should it? Are you talking about like which games or what situations?
It could be which games, which feels in a game. It could be situations. Although I think if you're gonna have stunting in a game, you should use it every chance you get.
I think stunting should be used all the time, and I think it should have a high enough reward for describing the action that it encourages players to do it. But probably not so high a reward. Like if you were playing D20, you wouldn't want to say, hey, give a little bit of color to your sword swing and you'll get plus 20 on your roll.
Yeah.
Because then every single action, everybody is going to be struggling to try and come up with a description so they can get that plus 20.
Yeah.
And that actually slows the game down.
Yeah, it would.
So if somebody can't think of something, you don't want to penalize them too bad.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So if they can't think of anything and they just go, oh man, I don't know. I'm just going to hit him. Then you go, awesome, roll. Your normal roll.
Yeah.
You know, so you want to give a bonus for the stunt, but not a bonus that's so high that everybody just struggles to try and come up with something that meets your criteria.
Of course. Now for like a horror game, would stunting fit?
It actually would, and I'm really, really glad you asked me that question. Because I was going to bring something up and I was hoping we would have time for it. When I ran a horror game, and I wanted to use stunting because I love the idea that players describing their action made that action more likely to succeed. Because as a GM, I have no problem with players succeeding.
Yeah, GM shouldn't have a problem with players succeeding.
I actually want them to. And I want them to save the day, and I want them to do all the stuff they want to do. So I want to help them do that, and I can help them help me by saying that if you describe your actions in a colorful way and you don't just sit there and read me directions like a cooking recipe or something, say, hit him in face with skillet, stir 3 times, then punch him in knee. That's really, really boring. But so, yeah, if you add color, I want you to be rewarded for that. But when I ran a horror game, I didn't want the color you added to be I pick that guy up by the ankle and swing him like a baseball bat into his buddy, and then light up my cigarette and wink at the camera. Where a little bit of light like twinkles in my eye and off my teeth. You know, my shiny pearly whites.
Okay.
Because I didn't want it to be cheesy. Whereas in Exalted, like I said, it's anime style action, so that's what your stunts are.
Uh-huh.
So what I said was, here are things you should do in this horror game. And if you do these things, if you add description in this way, you'll get stunt dice for it. And I rewarded, instead of for over-the-top action feats, you know, swinging from banisters and whatnot.
All right.
Instead, I rewarded descriptions that were bloody, that were scary, that were gruesome or violent. Because, you know, not because games should be about violence, but because a horror game, I wanted my horror game to be about violence.
Right.
You know, and I wanted the violence to not be glossed over. I wanted us to watch it.
Okay.
You know?
That makes sense.
Whereas in some monster movies, like there's blood spraying everywhere and stuff. And I wanted a little bit of that. So I would reward players for adding gritty detail.
All right.
I would award players for adding special effects. So if they used a dark demonic ability, then, you know, what does it sound like when that fireball that you've summoned from hell, you know, flies in the face of your enemy? What sound does it make? Does it make a crackling of like an inferno, or does it make a wailing sound of like 1,000 tormented souls?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Like, what does it do? So by adding like dark details or scary details or bloody details or whatever, they got bonus dice.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So I was going to say that you can absolutely put stunting in any game you want. Just take a few minutes to think about what kind of description you want to see and encourage, and then make sure that's the kind of description that you award stunt dice for.
That's a very good point.
Yep.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit of thought.
Yeah, we know that there's a certain kind of action that happens in Star Wars, and it's not the same kind of action that happens in The Matrix.
Right.
So you have to award for different things. In Star Wars, you want stuff that's kind of pulpy, stuff that's kind of silly. You want Han Solo to like run around the corner chasing some stormtroopers and then come running back going, "Oh my God, there's more than I thought."
Yeah.
Whereas in Matrix, you run around the corner and you see more and kill them too. You know, and you want a different kind of fight scene.
Yeah. You keep the mechanics working the same, just make it reward a different thing.
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
This is the kind of feels, these are the themes that I want in my game. So this is the way you're going to get awarded for bringing those themes in.
Right.
You know, make it about savagery, make it about heroism, make it about love and romance, whatever you want in your game.
Yeah. Good. I think we've covered this very, very well.
I'd say so.
I think we've got a lot of tips that can be used.
Yeah, maybe we'll hear some stories about people that try out stunting in their games.
That would be great.
Even so simple as your bonus D6 in a D20 game.
Yeah.
That would work really well.
Speaking of which, you can always email us your topic suggestions and comments to sharkbonecast@gmail.com. You have anything you want to add, Jarvis?
I don't think so.
All right. We'll leave it there.
All right.
See you next time.
See you later, guys.
That was good.
Woo!